Welcome again back to Youth Alert program. In this unit, we're going to talk about violence and youth. And you are a youth until you're 24 years old. That's when your brain, our brain, everyone's brain is fully developed. It's called the prefrontal lobe. So up to through 24, you are a youth. Now, violence and youth is a problem. It is murder, or what's also called homicide, is the second leading cause of death 10 to 19 years of age. Now, number one cause of death is accidental injuries like car accidents, but homicides, then suicides, cancer, and heart disease. So it's way up there, murder, violence, and homicide when it comes to a youth's life. It's very, very important. Also, 1/3 of kids have been reported bullied in the school. The victims of violence are normally their peers, peer violence when it comes to youth. And actually only 1% of youth violence happens in a school. 99% of serious violence happens outside school property, outside school grounds. So actually, as much as there is attacks of violence in schools, schools are actually much safer for youth than outside. Now, when you look at the ages 20 to 24 years of age, violence is at its highest. It seems so 19 to 24 is the highest age for not only doing violence, but being a victim of violence. After you turn 24, the rates of violence drop, probably because our brains are more fully developed then. But you could see 10 to 14 age, 15 to 19, and 19 to 24. 19 to 24 is the danger zone for violence for youth. So what we like to do is talk to kids before they get to that danger zone, when they are 10 to 14, when they are 15, 19. So by the time they get to their early 20s, they have the skills to survive and to thrive. You have to remember, there's 20 million armies in the world, standing armies in the world. Half of them are 19 to 24. So they are usually the tip of the spear. That's why we say that a lot of youth violence is a youth versus youth war. The age group picks on itself. So there were 656 physical assaults, people aged 10 to 24 in the U.S. were treated in emergency rooms. So again, it is quite a problem. 86% of the homicide victims were male, 14% were female, and 84% of the murders, homicide of youth was with a firearm. Now, we give extra attention, special attention, to those minorities and those of African American descent. Why? Because we are peace activists, and we believe in teamwork, and we believe in equality, but to get there, we have to practice equity. And equity is simply just being fair. If somebody just had a big meal and somebody's starving, you don't give them the same amounts, even though they're equal. You give the person who's hungry a bit more. So that we give extra attention, extra survival skills to those of the African American community, and we make no apologies on it. It is because if you are African American youth, violence is the number one cause of death, not number two. And in some age groups in the Hispanic community, violence also the number one cause of death. So we are focused like a laser beam on those in those minority communities. And it's not uncommon in different countries where minority communities are more victim to violence. So here in America, we are focused on this group. If we were in a different country, if we were in India or Japan or China, we might be focused on a different group. But we believe in equity to get to equality, to get to teamwork. Teamwork, we believe, is the solution to all problems, just as we believe violence, bullying, abuse is the number one root cause of all human problems. So we think that, we target, we isolate it, we expose it, we cure it, we work on the African American community. It's been unfair too long. A lot of these great schools are trying to close what's called the achievement gap, we're trying to close the peace gap. We don't know how kids show up to school sometimes. It's such a hard life. So we are trying to close the peace gap, which is majority out of school, so schools can close the peace gap, the achievement gap. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're interested in peace for people in all colors, but again, if we want to practice equity to get to equality and teamwork, we have to focus on the areas that are needed the most. I would also like to point out that race is not necessarily a true thing. This is Bill Nye, and he has said this: researchers have proven scientifically that humans are all one people. The color of our ancestors' skin, and ultimately my skin and your skin, is a consequence of ultraviolet light, latitude, and climate. Despite our recent sad conflicts here in the U.S., there is really no such thing scientifically as race. This is one person's opinion, Bill Nye, but he's saying race doesn't even exist. And if you go to the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, they have an exhibit there that might back up what Bill Nye has to say. They have, these are all what we call hominids. These are basically different versions of humans that have lived on this planet. Again, this is the opinion of some scientists. We are just one, Homo sapiens. The rest of the hominids, human-like beings on this planet, no longer exist. We are the only ones. So in a way, we have already won the human race. There, out of all the 15, 17 hominids that existed, some for millions of years, Homo sapiens, which they say has been around for 200,000 years, are the only surviving hominids on this planet. I would also like to point out one other thing on color and color of skin. There are also some scientists who are of the opinion that color doesn't exist. They say this: a color only exists in your head. There's such a thing as light, there's such a thing as energy, but no such thing as color. Color is quite literally a figment of your imagination. It only exists, we have something called cones in our eyes, and they are allowed to see a certain amount of colors. Shrimp, they have 4 times as many cones in their eyes. They can see 4 times as many colors. So, according to scientists, there are receptors in the neck that, like color channel sensors, and a sophisticated network of cells compares the activity of these cones and signals the brain produce the impression of color. So you may believe there's color, you and I may see color, but maybe scientifically it might not exist. Also, one other interesting scientific fact: some scientists believe that everybody's eye color is brown.